What's up, everybody? Welcome to TeslaFix. My name is Jan, and I, as always, want to give you a unique German perspective on Tesla. But today we have to talk about something else because the stock crashed. Everybody saw it around 19 or 20% since earnings call. So we have to look at this stuff, what's happening there. And that's why I have a very special guest now to explain this stuff. So let's see who it is.
Welcome to TeslaFix. Make sure to subscribe and like this episode.
So Yashu is back again here as a guest. I'm pretty thrilled that he came on because, of course, when we have something going on with stocks and especially with Tesla stock, then we have to call three people. We could call Ross Gerber, we could call Yashu, or we could call Tesla Boomer Mama. So I'm going to go with Yashu right now because he has a very unique perspective and I also very enjoy his content and his view. That's why he's here. So Yashu, maybe you can explain to the audience what you're up to and then we can start the episode here.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jan. And it's funny being mentioned with those people. I feel like I'm not worthy, right? But it's interesting. Like if you look at if you just look at the state of Tesla right now, it seems like with Tesla investors, of course, since earnings were down about 20% ish, $210 as we talk right now, it feels like sentiment is very apathetic. People are like, yeah, of course Tesla is going to crash. Yeah, it's probably going to fall even more. It feels like everyone is in this mind hive of, yeah, it's going to be ugly. There's almost this degree of apathy that we're seeing with Tesla investors. Now, of course, the reason for that is obviously Tesla's operating margin fell. When we talk about Tesla's general sentiment, we talk about Elon's sentiment on the earnings call, which we could talk about. I mean, it was pretty doom and gloom, right? Hearing your CEO kind of talk about how everything is just crap and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. And Wall Street doesn't like hearing that, right? Whether we like it or not, Wall Street looks at that and they go, whenever the CEO is making not excuses, but let's call a spade, making excuses for the company's performance by something that's happening market wide, although it may be accurate, Wall Street doesn't like hearing that because if there's one thing that we can't control, I mean, there's probably three things: weather, taxes, death. That's three. And then let's add on macro conditions on top of that as a bonus, because we can't control what's going to happen with the Fed. We can't really control what's going to happen with inflation. These things are going to happen. And actually, a piece of news that came out this morning is GDP growth actually beat massively. I think we expected 4% quarter over quarter growth, and it was 4.9 or something like that was what was printed. And now on the surface, you look at that and you go, that's great. I mean, the economy grew, right? That's awesome. But no, I mean, it's kind of bad if you think about it, because interest rates are really high. The Fed's paused, and the Fed looks at GDP and goes, "Wow, the economy is still pretty hot. If we raise interest rates even more, well, we have some padding. We can probably raise even more." So, of course, inflation is what matters at the end of the day. But when you look at the economic growth factor, it is interesting, this weird dilemma that we're in, right? Consumers are looking at interest rates and going, geez, this is ugly. Look at my interest rates that I'm paying for my house, for my car. If you look at the macro conditions, if you look at the job environment, and then you look at economic growth and you go, holy crap, how is economic growth so hot? So there's almost this double-sided edge of the economy right now that everyone is picking a side on and going, yeah, it's going to get really ugly. Housing is going to get really ugly still in the next 6 to 12 months. Or the other side of the coin is, well, this is kind of a soft landing. So all that to say, I think we have about 6 to 8 months here before we get a general direction of the market. Until then, we probably just waver around, I guess.
Yeah, I hope it will stabilize. I mean, the situation with the interest rates, the high interest rate situation we're in is, like you said, one of the most hurting thing for the consumer right now. And of course, this will stifle orders. That's why. How do you see now the pricing strategy that Tesla was making? Do you think that lowering prices was a good idea? I mean, it's on one side it totally pressures competition,
right,
and on the other side it also shows a little bit the market dominance of Tesla, that they can flex. Okay, we have still enough headroom with our, of course, with our margins that we can still go lower, especially now. And yeah, maybe what's your opinion on the price reductions?
Well, Well, I was really anti price reductions if possible.
Yeah.
Like I just look at it at a capitalistic level and I go, well, a
Yeah.
business that doesn't need to lower prices shouldn't lower prices.
Hmm.
But in this case, Tesla needs to lower prices. And there's still some people out there that will leave me comments and go, yeah, Tesla doesn't need to lower prices. They're only doing it to pass on the cost savings. Look, folks, this is not like kindergarten class. We're not giving everyone cake here. Like this is
Yeah.
the bottom line is Tesla can't find a buyer fast enough for the cars that they're selling at the price that they're selling. And they're ramping up massively so that they can't wait around with all these cars just sitting there. They need to lower prices. And so
Hmm.
I was really staunchly against the pricing cuts that we've seen here, but it is almost mandatory at this point because Tesla can't find buyers fast enough at the prices they were. Otherwise, they wouldn't have lowered prices, like I said. So I guess I commend Tesla on the fact that they can lower prices, like you said, flex their muscles, and still be
Hmm.
able to eke out margins that are still higher than legacy, grow at the speed that they need to. Because once we're out of this rut that we're in with the economy in the next 2 to 3 years, like no other car company will be even producing close to what Tesla is producing at the speed that they're producing at that time. So Tesla's almost trying to buy this little trough of lower economic growth, lower demand, and they're trying to buy their way out of it by lowering the prices. Now, this enters into our hot topic debate that we all have all the time as Tesla bulls about advertising, right? I get a lot
Hmm.
of flack for it. There's some staunch people that are really for advertising now that are coming out of the woodwork and supporting it. But advertising, I look at advertising not as a short-term fix to this, but as a long-term effort. Because I look at the average person that talks about cars today, they don't really know what's happening with EVs. I get a lot of random questions, I'm sure you do as well, about like the stupidest questions, no offense, right? Like, where are you going to charge this car? Like, how long does it take to charge? What, like you can just plug it into a regular 120-volt plug. Oh, I didn't know that. And it seems obvious to us, but I often am reminded that I live in a bubble. I live in an EV Tesla bubble,
Totally.
right?
Exactly.
And so education is what I look at in the next 3 to 5 years. How do we increase that total addressable pool of buyers today that will talk about an EV? They go, I would never buy an EV. It's going to get me stranded on the highway, blah, blah, blah. Like the typical FUD talking points that legacy media has shoved down their throats. And how do we make them into the pool of eligible buyers in the next 3 to 5 years? The people that are anti-advertising go, yeah, all you care about is short-term profits. You want to spend some money on ads, so then you can uptake demand in the next year. I mean, to a degree, that's going to happen. But I think the bigger goal is how do we educate the mass market? Elon looks at this and goes, we don't need to educate the market. If prices are low enough, people will flock towards the low-priced cars. They'll do their own research. They'll figure it out. Free market is all that matters. And I think it's kind of wishful thinking.
Absolutely wishful thinking, in my opinion, because I'm from marketing. Actually, my training is in marketing and everything. So I'm from video production. So commercials and everything is the way to go. And I also look, of course, with my studies in communication design and everything, also onto statistics, of course. And this is also a high, not just we don't freeball in marketing. It's not like we don't actually analyze everything. So it's interesting that you do that, for example, by split tests or making interviews with your target audience that you have and everything. And things like that have to kind of happen to really see does really everybody know about, for example, the price incentives that you have in the US? I think this is, if you just communicate this, it's just about communicating and educating, like you've said. It's not about making a commercial in the cinema, I don't know, or I don't know, at a like a car advertising about how sexy the car is. It's more about also, if pricing is the strategy you're doing, then advertise pricing, then advertise it a little bit. And I think what also people mix up, I think, is like they have a sense of traditional advertising in mind and don't think about online marketing, for example, as well. Because Tesla already did online marketing with Elon Musk, for example, as an influencer. That's influencer marketing, more or less. Yeah. And then we have different strategies that they could do, even if they just do a normal tour. I mean, their clips are performing pretty well, but they also don't have to perform well on X. They have to perform well on YouTube. You have to perform well on every platform that you have. And also, for example, the airport advertisings are also very important because their target audience still looks at the newspapers, even some print magazines as well. So you have to keep that in mind. Maybe you have to position yourself in some kind of, I don't know, magazine even. It even goes beyond digital. But of course, the US adapted digital pretty much, but in different areas around the world, digital isn't as adapted maybe. Also Europe or Germany is a little bit, we still have our print media here. So many older folks still read them and everything. So that's my opinion on that. So I totally agree that people have different opinions on what the term advertising means, and also that is a problem in the discussion. I think that it's not really they don't even know which word means.
It's a loaded it's what's that, like, it's a loaded term, right? To everyone it means something different. And the issue with that, and I run online ads for a living, that's what I do, right? And I manage advertising. So for me, when I think ads, I don't really think Super Bowl commercial. I don't really think, really cool intermission hockey game, GMC Sierra commercial, which I see all the time. I think, like you're saying, those clips that already exist for a large portion that Tesla's already produced, running those to audiences that are cold, that have never really talked about Teslas or but are in the market for buying cars, right? One of the audiences on Google that exists when you run paid advertising is an in-market audience for car buyers. Google knows before you, honestly, it's kind of creepy. Google knows before you even know that you're going to buy a car. They have it down to such a black box AI system where Google can predict who's in the market for what, just based on, let's face it, based on reading your emails, looking at your browsing history, seeing what Wi-Fi connection you're connected to and how far it is from certain places. Like, Google has this down to a science to know who's in the market for what. And one of the huge audiences that exists on Google Ads is is in-market car buyers, people that are actively shopping for a car today. And Tesla is running ads, and I've talked about how they're running Google search ads. Those are text-based ads. But what I would like for them to do is, if they took their Tesla clips, the 2 or 3 minute educational stuff, and maybe a pricing video, and they ran that as a YouTube in-feed or in-stream video to that audience. I'm not sure the level of scale that Tesla could hit, but they could easily spend between $1 and $10 million on this campaign and just see what happens from there. Advertising doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be an ongoing cost even. I almost look at advertising with Tesla as like the kindling and that little spark to start a fire in different audiences that are cold today. So if you just started a little kindling and you put together kindling and you sparked it up and a huge flame come up, great. Now you don't have to keep dumping money into that campaign. You can let the referral, the people that buy the cars do the talking, like kind of we do, so it's I look at it as massive opportunity for really pennies on the dollar. What's $10 million to Tesla? Tesla, bought billions of dollars of Bitcoin. Let's face it. Like, Tesla has a $26 billion cash reserve today. They spent 5, 10, 15, $20 million on a campaign. I'm not sure how much a Super Bowl commercial costs today, but I don't think it would have the same level of effect as having one Super Bowl commercial, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting that this spending people kind of feel like they don't have to spend anything on advertising because it doesn't make sense and everything. I think it's too emotional, this discussion as well. And you're totally right. This could hit its mark, and if it doesn't hit its mark, you see it in the statistics, and that's the thing. It's an analytical process even. Of course, it has to be on point with the content you're providing, on which platform you're providing, but also I would say, for example, Meta or Facebook is still a huge advertising platform, which where his target audience actually is of Teslas, of course, because no 20-year-old can afford easily a Tesla. That's why they are not really the target audience. It's a little bit higher than that. That's why, of course, the advertising
even exists, right?
Or mostly car buyers are like older than 30 at least. So we have kind of a range, but it's interesting how this will unfold. And I also hope that Tesla should produce those in-house clips are very important. But then they have to spread them as well. And I think authentic commercials are the best that you can see? Because Tesla is known for not sugarcoating anything. You could really tell that as well on the earnings call, which does hurt the stock, of course. But how do you see that being real or tempering expectations a little bit, and then being over or suddenly or sandbagging, you could say it like that. Do you think that's a good strategy overall, or should he just shut up and be quiet and wait in the corner?
Look, first I should just preface and say, like, whenever Elon has the urge to say something, I'm sure we all think we'd rather hear it than not hear it. The investors in Wall Street would say, well, I'm not sure if that's the platform for that sort of talk, when, I guess you could make the argument, Elon looks at it and goes, well, like, if this wasn't the case, we would be doing much better. But I don't know. To answer your question, do I think Elon overdid it? It was a bit doom and gloomy for me, because I think during these kind of times when growth is slow, interest rates are high, everyone thinks the world is ending tomorrow, these are the times where really excellent companies surpass the market leaders. And I'm not saying Tesla isn't a market leader, but often these are the times where the incumbent comes in and goes, you know what? Your legacy, you're scared to grow. You're not hiring during these times. You're not putting money into innovation projects. You're not testing. You're scared of interest rates being high for the next 2 years. You think there's no demand. I'm going to pile all my money into growing and investing it in our company in the next 2 years, so that when we're out of this rut, we are miles ahead of you. And I think it's very much like Elon to think this way, which makes me a little bit confused to go, why is he not thinking this way for the next 2 years, instead being more doom and gloomy? And I guess Elon's kind of said as much, and he said, I think all the bankruptcies, '08 and not making payroll almost made it so it almost scarred him to a degree, where he looks at, the macro conditions and he goes, my God, like, look at GM Ford. They went bankrupt last, '08 crash. Not that Tesla has any chance of really doing that with $26 billion in cash and almost no debt. But he looks at the times and he goes, this is scary, and not enough people are paying attention. So was it a signal to Legacy Auto of, like, if we're worried, man, you should really, really be worried? Maybe it was like a subtle message, but is it really the place for it? I would have rather had him talk about growth past this. Like, it's going to suck for the next 2 years, but once we're out, we're going to have this many cars in the fleet. We're going to launch some sort of software service that'll get us revenue here. Robotaxi should be live by then. Here's our launch out plan for Robotaxi. But again, this is me dreaming, and I guess we don't really live in kind of dreamland often. So
sadly, but yeah, I agree. It's interesting to see that. What in the earnings call was for you, was it a bad earnings call? Would you say, oh God, Tesla has a bad trajectory? Because that's something that Wall Street also paints or highlights with their reaction on the earnings call. And I also had Brian on the last time, and he was he looked at everything and said, yeah, it's kind of good. The numbers are great. Growth is still there. The factories are producing like crazy. We have CATL, the battery factory, also up now near the Tesla's plant. It's like next door. So we have everything in place. Then we have those nickel deals that the Tesla did thoughtfully pretty early for the next 5 years. So at least in the next 5 years, when everything is ramped up, the production, those contracts are already secured. So there's a lot of, because they need their resources, of course, to produce those batteries to get to 10 million cars. Do you think that they're still on track, and how do you view that?
Yeah, so I think Brian does a great job of looking at stuff from the supply side and goes, like, this is looking really good. The concern is still the demand side right now. I mean, for the longest time during COVID and the years that followed, everyone was like, how can Tesla just ramp up? There's buyers are here. How can they ramp up fast, right? And we saw this with the comments of Giga Mexico and kind of delaying until finding out what happens with the economy. So now it's a question of Wall Street goes, okay, at what cost will Tesla grow? They'll grow if they really want to, but at what cost? We saw another price decrease before earnings. We probably see another one, is my big guess, right? Before the end of the year, like, we're probably going to see another one. Like, we've seen like 10 this year. So it's just a question of Wall Street goes, okay, Tesla, let's say, has the supply ready for this. At what cost are they ready to grow at? And Elon has said they're willing to grow at all costs, right? Remember that X space that he did probably a couple of years ago now, or a year and a half ago now, when he said, if margins have to go to zero, that's fine. We're prepared to do that. Not saying that, not saying that's going to happen, that he said, but he said if they have to, that's fine. But we're going to grow at all costs, grow unit volume. So Wall Street looks at this and goes, how ugly are margins going to get before they bottom out? That's really the question. The second part of that question is, when we talk about all-time highs, the second part of that question, I look at it, is when do we get back to the level of margins that we saw 2021, 2022, right? The 25% gross XF credit, the 18% operating margin, that sort of level. When do we get back to that? And of course, the answer to that is when software is released, whether that's robotaxi, whether that's fleet software, whether that's something that Tesla pulls out of the hat. There is some sort of software margin, or there's some sort of software revenue that is going to disproportionately affect margins in the next few years. That's anyone's guess as to what that is. The ongoing guess everyone would probably say is robotaxi, and launching some sort of a $499 per month plan for fleet members to get in once robotaxi is solved, and then X per mile on a percentage basis or something like that. The problem is we'd have no real idea on when that will be and what that will look like in terms of monetary growth. Now, the important part is that Tesla solves robotaxi, and from there, it's kind of champagne problems. Tesla can figure out how to monetize this puppy, right? But until we get to that point where FSD is solved, and a lot of people say that it's getting close, but it seems like it's taken a long time. And Elon said by the end of this year, and we're rapidly approaching the end of 2023, which is kind of crazy. It seems like it's just anyone's guess as to when the next big margin story out of Tesla will be. It'll be hard to be autos, because auto right now, Elon has said Cybertruck is going to dampen margins in the short term substantially as well, which only makes sense. So it's just a guessing game as to figuring out when software comes online for Tesla at more of a meaningful scale.
Okay, so that means this software side is the money bag, you could say, that will raise expectations again from Wall Street as well. Yeah, interesting. But have you seen the core numbers of Tesla? You've looked at them, right?
Yes.
And of course, yeah. And maybe you can say something about how the structure of the earnings were, and how you feel. Was it good or bad? Was it expected? Or I mean, Wall Street had an expectation that was, of course, dampened. That's why they didn't. And
EPS,
with Elon's word, yeah.
Well, I mean, like you said, Wall Street dampened expectations a lot. EPS beat, which is great, but it's funny because I live in a world right now where I don't even look at EPS so much, as long as it's not a huge swing one way or another past expectations, because I think we're living in the present when we talk about that a little bit. And instead, of course, operating margin is what's going to matter to Tesla financials. And we had our new CFO, by the way, of course, this earnings call, which, man, someone's got to get this guy a better mic. Like, get this guy a better mic. Tesla has $26 billion in cash. Can someone buy him a $100 mic? Like, the audio level. Anyways, sorry, I'm ranting. But you talk about Tesla financials. Of course, operating margin is what matters in the long haul. I mean, Zach Kirkhorn said this. Said, don't look at gross margin. Don't look at gross margin X ZEV credits. Look at operating margin and follow that, because that's what we're trying to optimize for. I guess you could say the one big surprise was Tesla Energy and the margins that came out substantially higher than what I think people expected for energy, higher than autos, of course. And so now we're living in a pool where people are like, okay, hold on. Is energy going to be a big earner for Tesla moving forward? And of course, Tesla bulls have been saying this for a while. But energy, I think, was probably the biggest surprise for me, because I look at energy as a commodity, just as a commodity. I go, if you can supply energy to a company at a lower price than currently what they're having it at, and of course, there's a lot more to Tesla Energy than just supplying the commodity, because they have the whole V2G and, you can arbitrage and all the software. But putting that aside, if you're able to supply energy to a company at a lower price than currently they're paying for energy, they don't care that it says Tesla on the energy, right? It doesn't matter to them where their power comes from, so as long as it's stable and lower cost than what they have today. So again, I think everyone's looking at the current numbers. I think the future numbers are what matters. And all in all, with all the shutdowns that Q3 brought for Tesla, I think the numbers were okay. Tesla showed some strength during times where factories were literally down. And then, of course, they had to ramp back up. So Q4 will be more indicative. Q4, I think, will beat expectations a lot more just because Q4 is very hot for auto sales, as we all know.
Yeah.
And then, of course, going into Q1, it's exciting because the $7,500 tax rebate gets applied at point of sale starting next year. So customers won't have to claim it off their income tax returns. They can get it right when they buy a car, which is the way it is in most parts of the world that they have this. But in America, it's going to start like that next year. So that's
awesome.
Also,
I didn't know that. That's big news for me. But I don't live in the US, so not as big. I'm pretty jealous here from my side because Germany just cut down the incentives because
really?
they ran them pretty long, and now they're kind of cutting them down. Especially when they're own car companies here, the local car companies like VW, Mercedes, and BMW, besides Mercedes, don't have the same strategy as Tesla, where they are just all in EVs. Of course, BMW, for example, wants to go on hybrids, and also VW head of or CEO Bloom is talked very much about e-fuels, how awesome they are and stuff like this. So yeah, it's kind of goes hand in hand sometimes with the incentives as well. So they maybe the technology they target will change more on the hybrid side, which is totally ridiculous if you look at the market trends. But that's a whole different story. If you look at the competition, I don't know, it's crazy. And talking about the competition here for 1 second, NIO, for example, also had negative margins all the time, and almost every car company has negative margins on their EVs. But now Tesla has still plus margins, just lowers the margins, and suddenly the world is on fire. Are there double standards, do you think, with the companies?
Well, I think it all comes back to valuation. Tesla was valued at all-time highs as a growth story that had margins that were substantially higher, like 5 times higher than legacy, of course. And the operating margins were looking really good. And so what happens often is that you see a disproportionate effect on both the upside and the downside. So I'll explain. So when operating margins start to get to 15, 20+%, like Apple, let's say, you start to get this re-rating of the stock to this like massive multiple, because it's like, holy crap, like you don't find companies that have this level of operating margin that are growing as fast as Tesla was growing. So you start to see some overzealousness at that upside in anticipation for our operating margin to continue upwards. And then the same thing happens on the downside, where you get to that 10% range, and I think Tesla's at 7 or something like that this quarter operating margin, and you start to see or 7.6, and you start to see where, okay, is Tesla going to start going below 5? And then you start to see this re-rating on the downside of a stock disproportionately as a value stock. And so I think both sides are overzealous, one on the upside, one on the downside. But I think the Tesla story still continues to be that Tesla can get back above those operating margins that they were at eventually once the fleet grows enough and they sell software to the fleet. And that continues to be the story. So to answer your question, NIO, of course, never was really looked at as a company that's printing money. I mean, to be fair, no EV company is today. People talk about BYD, but if you back out subsidies and you back out gas car sales, they're also selling gas car and hybrid cars. It's really, and they're propped up by the Chinese government, which is fine. Like that's their prerogative. It's not really an apt comparison, in my opinion. So. Yes, NIO is a little bit different. But I mean, I hope success for all EV companies. But to be fair, they're all like we saw what happened with Lucid. Disgusting numbers, right? Like they didn't even want to report their delivery count for this quarter because it was so low, probably. And so they need like their operating I think their gross margin is minus like 200% or something like that. Just it's just gross. So I don't know what's going to happen with the industry, but it seems like it's hard to grow at negative gross margins, like negative 200 gross margins. Like you just can't continue to do that sustainably, and there's just no end in sight. So I think Tesla is just valued much differently. Tesla is kind of the Apple of the EV space, right? If anyone wants to invest in EVs, they have to invest in Tesla. Like there's no other company that has positive financials. Apple's the same way, where if someone wants to invest in tech, Apple's like the safest cash like stock that people look at. Like, okay, if I put my money in Apple, it's not going to fall 40%, right? Like
Yeah.
Apple is a great, like, so it's kind of the Apple of the EV world.
Interesting. Yeah. Crazy how this unfolds. How the you talked about the story, and you've mentioned Lucid, and I find it. I had to giggle there a little bit because I'm thinking about the CEO of Lucid who just bagged like 450 million as pay, and I don't know if that's a good look for the company while not reporting good numbers. I mean, their product itself as a product, because it's again low what else low
It's a low bar.
production numbers. They have low
okay.
low production numbers. That's why it's almost like prototypes, more or less, many prototypes that more or less that they could, or prototype lines that they have, not massively scaled lines. And of course their product is good. I mean, the drag coefficient is pretty good. The numbers are great with accelerations and everything. The range is good and everything. And maybe the story for Lucid is that they are backed by, I think it was it the Saudis?
Yeah,
the Saudis are backing Lucid. Maybe that's the growth story, that they say, okay, the Saudis will pour oil money into that thing until it works. And the CEO can get paid 450 million. I would just leave that in the company and try to grow with those 420 million. I think they could use that. Maybe he could have gone with 20 million, like Mary Barra or something in that direction. That could be possible, but of course, I don't know.
Man, these guys got really good gigs. They're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to produce very little. I mean, very little cars. I mean, the biggest thing is not the amount of cars that they produce. It's really like how low they are versus expectations. Like, I think expectations were like 3 or 5 times this year what they're actually going to end up doing. So, but the bottom line is that I look at the car industry and I go, okay, well, Rivian, I actually look at Rivian and I go, it seems like Rivian has a degree of like that kind of spark element to it a little bit. Because I go, Rivian, Amazon's backing Rivian, and it has that kind of legitimacy to me where I go, okay, Rivian might be able to make it if they are tight enough running the ship. Lucid, I don't know how long they'll survive. Nikola, entirely different story. We saw what happened with Trevor Milton last week. He's ordered to pay $150 million in damages to Nikola investors. He's going to get sentenced at the middle of November, I think. So he's facing up to 30 years in prison. It's a lucrative market, obviously, because there's people coming in these markets and going, I'll do anything to be a part of the EV market. But unfortunately, no one comes close to even producing anywhere near what Tesla is at the scale Tesla's at globally.
Yeah, sure. It's like that. I mean, you look at the numbers, Tesla is still growing their business, and the production numbers keep raising, not in the rate that Elon wishes, I think, but people have to keep in mind that, oh, look, Tesla's down, or they said this on the earnings call, or that. In my opinion, it's a little bit like, look at the market situation, guys. Everybody, look at the market. The market is pretty difficult right now. I mean, VW, for example, claimed, like it was a half year ago, they claimed like, the China sales are down. Oh God, what's happening there? And also the overall, the EV sales like lower than the expectations. And even the brand manager or the brand CEO of VW, not the VW group, but VW said the roof is on fire to his managers. It was leaked out. And if we look at them, they are claiming like, look, we can't, like the overall EV market is shrinking. But if you look at the Tesla numbers again, no, it's not. People want to buy EVs, but just good EVs and priced at a rate that makes sense for that what you get, and that's not what VW is offering. So I also think that it's so hard for them to do that, but of course it's easier to claim that the whole market is shrinking. But I don't know. I don't know how VW will turn this around.
Yeah, well, actually, I was looking at numbers today. I think the Chinese net electric vehicles market, or net emissions vehicle market, grew from 2% 5 years ago to I think 35 to 39%
Crazy.
in like 5 or 6 years. Like the penetration of the market is crazy. Now, of course, China's a little bit different beast because China, the amount of subsidies that China is pouring into electric vehicles is insane, and they're doing it at all costs. And we can have this discussion, I guess if you want later, because I think I have this tinfoil theory about why they're doing that. But if you look
Awesome.
because if you look at just price cuts, what
Mhm.
does that do to competitors? When Tesla continues to lower prices at the level that they're lowering at, where now a Tesla in some states after EV tax credits is like $29,000, right? Well, that kind of makes your BMW or Mercedes car, that 50, 60 grand car, obsolete almost, right? For a percentage of those buyers. Not only that, it lowers resale prices for all cars. And more importantly, and this point was made on X not too long ago in a Spaces, was that the amount of leases that Legacy has that are coming off the books, the loss that they're going to have to take when they are traded back in, because the values of these leases have shrunk. The market value of these cars have shrunk so massively because of what Tesla's doing across the board. It's going to be so ugly that I'm not even sure how they're going to brunt those losses on paper. So it opens up a whole pool of problems. And there's no doubt in my mind why everyone hates Elon is because he's making life very hard for a lot of people in a lot of different industries.
Yeah, you can really say that. I mean, for example, we also heard news in Germany from Mercedes, who joined the price war. Actually, they joined the price war. They lowered prices as well, and they also got some numbers in. I've heard some rumors. It's more rumor kitchen here, but that customers aren't happy with the design of the EQSs that they put out, and it's not really on brand. And also for me, from the design perspective, I look at Mercedes' cars on the street sometimes, and I see new models rolling around, and suddenly Mercedes has a light bar in the middle, and it's totally off-brand. It's so messed up. In my opinion, they had such a great design, a core design, and now it's kind of shifted to this soap, you could say, just a soap. I mean, the drag coefficient is better maybe than the other designs, but you have to keep in mind it's Mercedes. It's very important. The design aspect for Mercedes and also BMW and also Audi, of course, is very important. Of course, for every brand, but you know what I mean. That they are. Yeah. It's this German precision, German design was held very high, and now they are crumbling with that. That's because they can't figure out what their customers want. Who is their customer? I think they wanted to split them up to being okay. That are regular customers, and now we have those new ones that they're going to go with EVs. So they need something futuristic and new, and totally missed the mark with that. And I think that's also a factor. But now. They started the price war, but a few months ago they said, "Oh, we will never engage in that. It doesn't make sense and everything." And for them it doesn't make sense, of course, because they don't have the margin.
Exactly.
Or maybe Mercedes has the margins because their cars cost $120,000. So, around that ballpark. But how do you see that development for the German car brands? Do you see that they're off a good start in comparison to the American companies? Do you see a difference there? But
I think German brands are world renowned for their engineering and their not futuristic designs per se, but their futuristic thinking when it comes to manufacturing and design. And so what I think Tesla has going for them is that they're not Tesla, they're Tesla Berlin when they're in Germany, right? There's a degree of like localization of the Tesla brand in places. So when we talk about Shanghai, it's not Tesla. It's like, this is Tesla China, right? And so I think the same thing with Berlin. I think I remember an interview Elon did outside of the mud field in Berlin when it first broke ground. And he said, the cars that are going to be designed in this factory are going to be for the German people. He said that there's going to be a model that's going to be like German specific, right? It's not going to be anywhere else. It's going to be for here. And I think, of course, Tom Zhu said the same thing with Tesla China, and that there needs to be a Chinese car that Tesla can make. So I think what Tesla is going for them is that they don't really need to be this multinational conglomerate brand. In fact, they can be this like hyper localized offshoot of the Tesla brand and continue to have that appeal that you're talking about within Germany. And I guess you could speak to this obviously better than I can. Like, how do people look at Tesla when it comes to the German people.
Yeah, it's you could say that Germany is pretty interesting in that sense because we are not nationalistic anymore. Since, of course, obviously World War II, it was a pretty hard cut for us to like everything, and with the repercussions of that totally horrible period, we kind of nobody hangs out a German flag in pride, and if somebody does that, he's looked at it with a side eye, like what the hell is happening? But only in for example, in football, maybe in the World Cup or something. Then there is some kind of pride. But Germans really take much pride in their companies they're working in. So it's like a surrogate for the patriotism. They have it in the engineering, or many Germans are engineers actually. That's why they are pretty much working in the field, and they take pride, of course, in the German brands, and then they compare it to the American brands and say, ha ha ha, look at the panel gaps, ha ha ha. And for us, it's so much in the precisions. But if you zoom out a bit and look globally onto Germany from a global perspective, then you kind of see, okay, we have totally ridiculous complexity inside of the car with the buttons, for example, how everything you can change. I mean, it's convenient for some people because you can touch here and I can it's like a cockpit, but it's difficult. It's not easy. It's the entry curve is pretty high, and the Germans are so used to that design that this minimalist approach of Tesla, it doesn't so much appeal to everybody. It appeals to the younger generation, for example. Also, the younger engineers really like that, but now you can clearly see that they are switching, and I think it's difficult, this generational gap. We have a big generation gap as well, that people prefer the old design. They really like the diesel design and everything. It's hard to get off the fossil fuel industry here. So I would say the perception of Tesla is overshadowed a little bit also that Elon is perceived as a little bit cocky and this American CEO, or this loud American as well. This also ties into that. But overall, the younger generation, I would say, or the younger engineers or middle-aged, they kind of see that and see, but come on, he really does something, and many Germans are also tired about that. Those companies, VW, for example, try to skew the picture of the brand all the time, and that they don't talk facts. And Herbert Diess actually really said something and said, wait a second, guys, we have to wake up, or we have to cut down 20,000 jobs in Wolfsburg. And this really hit home. But that VW doesn't like that. You don't step out of line in Germany. That's why you got sawed off immediately. And but overall, many Germans, the masses really like that if people also are sometimes verbal about the facts, and then they see. So I think if Tesla keeps on hitting making the fastest cars, the longest range, and in that segment, and also the ingenuity, that's where you can really hit home with the Germans, and that's what they like about Tesla, I would say. So a long-winded answer to a short question.
That's good.
But
that's good perspective, because as a North American, let's say, as a Canadian, I don't have the insight into the outside brands into Tesla. So what you're saying is the younger generation is more impressionable when it comes to outside brands like Tesla now than they would have been, let's say, 10 years ago?
I would say so, yeah, totally. And it's because of also the ingenuity that's where you can really take the bag here. It's very important, and it's about also for example the Nürburgring. If you have good times in the Nürburgring, that's something that runs through the news, because then we say, Porsche is our pride. Why is Porsche losing against Tesla? That can't be. And also like that. So these kind of competitions really need to happen. Yeah,
wow,
it's funny, but
interesting. Obviously, like I see those news cycles as well, but like to me, like as a non-car head, it doesn't really matter. But that's funny, interesting. Everyone takes notice of that.
Really, they really took notice, and also charging speeds is important and everything, and also charging infrastructure. I mean, Tesla's totally hitting home with that, and the ease of use and everything. But it will take time, but I think they're gonna catch more and more on. And I mean, you can really see the numbers in Europe overall. I mean, Model Y was on the top rank all the time. So
And the world is
the
big.
numbers speak for themselves. Yeah.
Like the European penetration for Tesla is still very early. Like Tesla's not
absolutely.
right. Like Tesla's not at a place where like North America, I think we take it for granted here that we're like, okay, there's a decent amount of Teslas. I think Vancouver might be one of the highest per capita places that Teslas exist in the world, other than San Francisco. So, and even San Francisco, I think, might not beat out Vancouver in terms of per capita numbers. And so when I went to Europe and I went to Italy and France, I'm like looking around, I don't see very many Teslas. I'm like, we're very early. This is very early stages into what will be like a multi-decade national, like or multi-decade industry shifting disruption that we're going to see take place.
Yeah, and how many? Just a question, because you went to Italy. How many SUVs did you see? How many compact cars did you see?
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, I didn't really see very many big cars, and the only big cars that I saw were Sprinter vans. Actually, there was a lot of Sprinter vans. So,
welcome to Europe, and that's the big thing. That's why maybe we can transition on to the other topic that I had in mind, and that's of course the compact car. And this is something that needs to happen for the European market. In Germany, we kind of have bigger sedans and also SUVs, very popular. Italy is very an outlier in that sense. Also, Spain has a lot of cheaper, smaller cars, but it's also about the income median. That's also a huge factor, that smaller cars, also in Italy, small roads, it's a historic country. I mean, Rome was there, so they can't really make the streets so big. They have, of course, the highways as well, but overall, you need to navigate with your small Fiat 500, for example. That's a very popular car, or the smaller Peugeots from France and everything. So the compact, how do you see that front developing? Because we know they need to happen for the rest of the world. China and Europe is totally the market for that. How do you see that?
Well, the compact, so at a price level, I almost look at the compact and I go, don't we kind of have it already in North America at least? Because I'm like looking at the tax incentives, like $28,000 is what the net cost is. Like, okay, the compact is supposed to be 25 grand. At a price level, you could argue that it's pretty close to where it needs to be. But from a utility perspective and having a smaller car, I think this is again where the localization of Tesla's manufacturing comes in. I would love for them to develop a car out of Berlin that is very European specific, that fits through those narrow roads and, has a really loud honk that people can, because everyone loves to honk there. But in China, it might look very different, right? So I think what Tesla's trying to wait for here is like really nailing the 4680. A manufacturing line, getting it to the point where they're super comfortable with all the engineering that they have to do out of Texas, and then obviously replicating those lines at a large enough scale where they have extra battery capacity with the 4680 to do the compact, because I think you will have to use the 4680 battery cells to make this happen. But it feels like we're still a long ways away from there, unfortunately. Like, as much as I'd like to say like Tesla's going to unveil this compact next year, I thought at some point last year they were going to do it when the auto show happened in China. But it just feels like Tesla has a lot with their Model 3, Y, and Cybertruck launch now happening, where it's like, are they really going to pick up the everything and then start relearning about a compact coming out soon? So I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. What do you think?
I'm also not sure. I hope what I can imagine that would make sense, because Mexico they didn't have the designs ready for the factory. That's why there's this delay of breaking ground there, because also many people speculated about that. What's happening there? Didn't they get approved? What's happening with the Mexican government? Why are they so slow? But it's about they didn't brought in the designs that you cannot approve when nothing is there. So that's why Tesla needed to do that. But what I could see, or potentially could see, that I find very interesting is Berlin, actually, because in Berlin they are right now expanding. They are already cut down the trees and everything. So they try to expanding the northern part more, and they overall the size of they're gonna go into the next phases. And I think if they're gonna make it is maybe a smaller line for the compact car actually before they launch in Mexico. That could be a surprise, for example, that they test, because when they're earlier, we know that Tesla will shift their plans left and right if they need to. If for example, Mexico takes too long to build, maybe they're gonna start building another pilot line at Berlin, and also maybe in Texas. We don't really know, but I think, because Texas wouldn't make so much sense. That's why I'm hinting at Berlin. That could be interesting to see. That's why. But will it be next year? I'm not sure. Maybe not. I would say I would give it more room, or Tesla more room in that in economic environment.
Yeah. And I guess that makes sense, because during the earnings call, I think the CFO even said, like, we have Berlin and Texas that we could still massively expand if we needed to. We don't need Mexico. So that's a good point.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking that as well. Yeah, and also that they said that they don't talk about products. The earnings call was pretty interesting. Yeah. But talking about the Cybertruck all the time.
Yes.
But yeah. But how do you see that? Talking about the Cybertruck, because they talked about the production ramp and that it's kind of difficult to ramp this thing, and it took time. And Elon talking about the past that they had problems going up and everything, but now with the run rate in 2 years with 250,000 Cybertrucks a year, do you see that as a positive or a negative in that sense? Is it too low or?
Yeah, obviously it's a bit lower than everyone expected in the years to come. But I'm not sure. This is one of those cases where I'm not sure if Elon's just trying to slow the roll a little bit, and he looks outside and he goes, "People are way too bullish on how fast this thing is going to come out, at what scale, and what pricing." So the thing with the Cybertruck right now, the problem is that no one really knows the specs and the pricing of this thing yet. So it makes it a little bit hard, because this Tesla Semi event that happened was a little bit like, it was great, but it was not as good as if they'd come out with the exact specs and like the range and like everything about the Tesla Semi. Instead, people were left guessing a little bit. And I just hope that the Cybertruck event is not like that. And it's very much like, these are the exact specs, these are the exact pricing. Get in line, and then we'll tell you how long the wait list is. I hope it's not like we're going to deliver 100 to special people like actors and whatnot, and then we don't know when the first actual real production for average people are going to come out. So, it's weird, because it's like we're only a month away and we don't really have very many details on pricing for Cybertruck yet, which is kind of worrying, because it's like there's no way pricing is what it was when they first unveiled Cybertruck pricing. I would be shocked if pricing was at that level. So pricing is going to be higher for the higher trims, of course. I don't even think they're going to do one of the trims. But regardless, the Cybertruck is so exciting, because when we start to see it driving around in the wild, and it's not like a Tesla employee, but it's like an average person, that person is going to be so popular. It's going to be free advertising. And because of the scale is not going to be very high, it's going to be worth a lot more in the resale market. Like, these things are going to sell for 2 or 3 times what they're going for eventually.
Yeah, and
at least for the first year.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard about the news that Tesla might cancel orders that are too much. That people who ordered over 20 Cybertrucks. So sad for Matthew Donegan Ryan, who really ordered many Cybertrucks for his business.
A lot of people did that, though. A lot of people did. And like, Tesla didn't say don't do that. Like, Tesla, if anything, Tesla has a fleet business that they talked about after. And so, like, I don't know if the communication there is as good as it should have been, because I know, like, Matt Smith has a lot, I think, of Cybertruck reservations with FST, because he wants to run a fleet one day. And so I don't know why, but in this case, what you're talking about is something that I quote tweeted out. It's actually a Juju Gang member who posted. He said that his Model Y delivery got canceled because he's labeled a reseller of Teslas. And so he's banned from buying Teslas ever in the future. So, and he had 69 Cybertruck reservations on order. And so they've taken all his deposit money as well, which kind of sucks. So don't know what'll come from that.
Wow, that's horrible. Oh, that's pretty. They took the deposited money.
Yeah, it was forfeited. Yeah, it was like 10 grand.
Works?
He said. Sorry.
And that did work, or is that legal or anything?
Oh, well, apparently if you read the terms of services, if you're a
Damn.
reseller, like they can take your stuff.
Okay.
But like, I don't know. Tesla was talking about fleets back then, and if you wanted to be a fleet operator, there
Yeah.
was no other way to order a Cybertruck. So I don't know why, really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. Crazy. Okay, that's wow. Yeah, crazy. And back to your hint that you've said before, because in China you said that why is China putting so much money into the EV space, and why do you think it is? Now you can roll out your theory on that, because I'm pretty curious about this.
So first of all, I think we could do an hour on this, because I think it's like a geopolitical tinfoil hat theory. And if you're not into conspiracy theories, whatever. But here's my theory. I think China looks at the electric cars as the way that we should have looked at smartphones in 2005. Right?
Yeah.
They're data machines that enable communication. In this case, cars are data machines that enable transportation. Now, China looks at the smartphone market and goes, damn it, if we could have been the pioneers in smartphones and been the Apple, like the American company that is all across the world, that has all of the data on everyone, but we had planned for this in 2005 or 2001 or whatever, before the smartphone really came into mass market, we would have been so much better off with data. Because remember, China's goal, the CCP's goal, is for world domination, to get the most data on everyone and to be able to really shift the world narrative in whatever way they want. Enter TikTok. Anyways, we don't have to get into that wormhole. Yeah. So I look at the electric car in the same way. The data, the cameras, the transportation, the car being able to be off and on governmental control in the future. These are all things that I'm sure that the CCP have thought about and gone, you know what? If in 20 years we own the global market, or we have penetrated at least our national market with our own Chinese EVs, that control will not be given up to a third-party American company or a third-party European company. It will be a Chinese company. And so they will relent when we have requests, in the same way that Apple does not relent when it comes to your smartphone today and the security that you have. So I think this is a big long con for the CCP to subsidize the crap out of all domestic EV manufacturers, so then they can penetrate at least their national market with EVs before an outside company like Tesla can come in and protect data, at least to the level that they probably wouldn't want. So anyways, that's my conspiracy theory over why I think the Chinese are hell-bent over EV adoption. I don't think it's some sort of greenwashing. I don't think it's some sort of, they care about global warming. Let's face it, they don't. I think this is a large-scale data move in the next couple of decades. And China's been always really good at thinking decades ahead. Like they think decades ahead, while we're thinking about who the next president will be in the next year, right? So I think this is a long thing, and I guess who cares, because the world is getting electrified at the same way, and we'll talk about these geopolitical security risks, I'm sure, by 2030 and beyond.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory, and this could be. It makes sense. It makes sense a lot, and. Also, if you look at the German market again, I mean, Polestar, for example, which is also a Swedish brand out of Volvo. But Geely owns Volvo, and Geely is a Chinese company, of course, and they produce them. And Mercedes partners with Geely now to produce EVs, which is kind of hilarious, actually, and sad that we don't have the capabilities of massive production here with batteries, of course.
Yeah.
And also that all the ingenuity is and the patents are in the internal combustion engine technology and not in the EV technology. We have some patents, or many companies have some patents, but still, it's kind of sad. But now also the MG, for example, which is also an English brand that was bought up by a Chinese company, that they produce also EVs, and they are already penetrating the German and European market. So we have more and more Chinese EVs, and of course, which was an interesting, you could say, indicator of Chinese dominance. They are already flexing some muscles here, is at the Munich Auto Show that was happening here, the IAA. It's an automotive exhibition here, and BYD, actually. They had the biggest booth and the biggest everything, and the Chinese brands were everywhere, and that's when the German companies started to see, what's happening there? And yeah, they're in a strange situations because with software they try to partner with Huawei actually, and with production with Geely. It doesn't look actually very good. There's nothing original in Germany anymore, I think, and that's hard for the automotive sector. So I see them already expanding and growing, but I think Tesla will be dominating the market. But with the massively, if China starts to flood the market, I think it will work this time because the Japanese, for example, flooded the American market in the 70s, 80s with their Toyotas, and it worked. And in Germany, it didn't work because the German quality of cars were better still. That's why nobody noticed it and didn't want a Toyota. But today, I mean, even in the pickup truck segment, Toyota is pretty strong, and the Japanese brands are also a go-to. Yeah, interesting stuff happening. Yeah, crazy. But Yashu, for the end, how do you see the development of Tesla for the future? Do you see it bright or dark? How can we place now this crazy earnings call? Is it good? Is it bad? What's your overall summary of the episode?
Well, I think it's hard not to be optimistic about Tesla's future, just because the macro market conditions are going to happen to every company around the world. It's not a Tesla specific issue. It is a economic issue. It's a structural macroeconomic issue. And if anyone's really placed to be a leader in that environment, it's the company with virtually no debt, $26 billion in cash, a really good product, someone that hasn't ever advertised before, has Elon at the helm. It's hard to see another company that as optimistic, especially in the auto space, of course, than Tesla moving forward. So it's very exciting days ahead with all the tech and everything that still has to come out. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Okay. Cool for this small summary. I also agree with that. Also, the energy sector is pretty interesting. And also in the future, when we reach or Tesla reaches 10 million cars a year, if they reach it at 2030, maybe later. But I can see that if the market is saturated, then they can just, we have an overproduction of batteries, let's put it into battery storage. And then we're going to see the energy segment explode. That's my opinion also. So Tesla is pretty good at shifting. You could really see that with the chip shortage. They just shifted. They just programmed for different chips, like 5, 6, 7 different chips. They didn't care. In I think 3 weeks, we're back online, and everybody else stopped production of cars. It's crazy. So I think Tesla has the right mindset and especially flexibility they took from the software space and took them over to the manufacturing. I would say that's why that's a huge advantage. So yeah, let's see how it unfolds. Yashu, thank you for being on. I know you have to jump. That's why we're gonna wrap it up here. So thanks everybody. And also Yashu, if you have something you want to tell my audience, now is the time, and then we're gonna go off here.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me on, Jan. It's awesome to be on the channel. Keep putting out the great content that you are. You're doing great. Everyone hit subscribe on Jan's channel. If you want to check me out, it's HitThatBid. I do a lot more live streams, so if you're into streams and stuff like that, feel free to check me out. But hit subscribe while you're here on TeslaFix as well.
Thanks, Yashu, and also subscribe to Yashu, and also check him out up next. I'm gonna put the links down below. So there's only one last thing to say now to the audience, and that's goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Take care.
Wasn't this episode awesome? Let's accelerate the pace of innovation by subscribing to TeslaFix. It is my absolute favorite channel on the whole interwebs.